Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Welcome back to another episode of the Peak Performance Show. I'm your host, Thor Conklin. Today in studio, she is known as the business catalyst, helping elite business owners become game changers in their field and achieve million-dollar breakthroughs. Fortune 500 executive, she also has consulting programs that encompass billion-dollar corporate strategies combined with the speed and agility of the most powerful online strategies today. She's been featured on every single major news network, ABC, NBC, Fox. She's the host of a top 100 marketing and management podcast, Unstoppable Success Radio. Please welcome Kelly Roach. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. And wow, thanks for the intro.
Well, I was just fortunate I didn't mess that one up. Usually we have to do 2 or 3 takes. So this is good. We did this one live.
Absolutely.
Fill in just a little bit more on your bio. Take us back to the young Kelly. What got you to where you are today?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think just having a ferocious work ethic and just having tenacity and drive. I came from a family with 5 kids in the family. And so it was kind of you earned what you achieved kind of thing. I got a lot of no's growing up. We can't afford it. We can't do this. We can't do that. And so for me, I learned at a really young age that, whatever you want in life, if you're willing to work for it, you can achieve it. And so that's kind of the mentality I took on. I was always, in college, I had 3 different jobs at all times. And then when I got into the Fortune 500 world, it was really my chance to take control of my destiny and say, I don't want to have to struggle financially anymore. I don't want to have to get no's. I want to, skyrocket and be financially free. And that's what I was able to do. And I think that served its purpose. But then eventually you learn, obviously, when you climb the corporate ladder, that if you want to bring together both financial abundance and flexibility and fulfilling work that makes a difference in the world, most of the time you have to go out and create that for yourself, right? You can't count on someone else to deliver that to you on a silver platter. So I never dreamed of being an entrepreneur, but it kind of just presented itself as okay, this is what I want my life to look like. And I realized, finally that the only way I was going to be able to achieve that was by going out and creating it.
For me, I remember as a young child, I was at the boat show with my dad, and he had been looking for years to buy a boat. And after years and years, he finally found it. And he's like, that's the one. I'm like, great. Well, let's just get the sales guy and let's do it. He's like, I can't afford it. And for me, that was the moment that shifted everything for me. It was like, yeah. I'll never get in that position. Was there a moment for you like that where you just was there a moment in time that it just all kind of clicked and said, this is it?
Yeah, honestly, so many moments. And I wrote about this in my book, but I do remember there was one time I was probably in middle school. I was on the free lunch program. And I remember there was a new fill-in in the lunch line. And she did not know that I was on the free lunch program. And so every day we went up and we handed in our envelopes, which were empty. This is back in the day where there was change and you turned in an envelope. And she didn't know, right? So she ripped open the envelope. There was nothing in it. I was mortified. To this day, I still can't remember what happened after that because I literally was so embarrassed standing in the line in front of all my friends, empty envelope. She kind of looked at me. I looked at her. I don't remember what happened next, but I just remember that level of just vulnerability and embarrassment. And, I just never, ever wanted to experience that again. And something just clicked in me that I didn't have to experience that again. And I think that's why even when I was 12 and 13 years old, I was the gatekeeper at the pool, and I was the mother's helper helping babysit even before I could babysit on my own. And, I just wanted to take things into my own hands and not put myself in that position again.
Yeah. So it's so interesting is that you hear so many great success stories, and they normally start from something like that.
Yes.
That pain from the past. And we all, as entrepreneurs, want to avoid that pain. We don't want to have those losses. We don't want to have those failures. But that's exactly what we need in order to propel ourselves to that next level, to that next thing. And so often we want to avoid it at all costs, but we have to go through those. And that's what makes us.
It is absolutely what makes us. It's so crazy that you just said that, Thor, because the podcast episode that I released this morning said, the title of it is What Your Failure Rate Says About You and How Far You Will Go in Your Business. Because you're right. We work so hard to try and avoid failure when in reality, failure is like the best data set that you can possibly get for how to succeed at the next level. But most of us are so busy protecting ourselves and worrying about our ego and, taking it emotionally that we miss the whole point, which is these are signs that are pointing us to say, no, don't go left here. You need to go right. Or, no, that wasn't exactly the right approach. Let's try this instead. So when you can kind of let your ego go and get to the place where when failure happens, you can focus on analyzing it so you can make great decisions about what you're supposed to learn from it. That's when I feel like you really begin to evolve and skyrocket as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, no question. A couple of years ago, I went back and I actually wrote down all the lessons that I learned in every single job that I had going way back. Grass cutter when I was 8 years old. And because one, I didn't want to make the mistakes twice, right? I wanted to make sure I had those written down. I love that. Yeah. And I could pass them along as well to everyone. I also put things that I learned that were helpful as well. But I really want to memorialize that and never forget those lessons, because it's truly is those failures that push us forward. Look, you can't you can't get muscles without going to the gym, right? Lifting heavy weights.
Exactly right.
So it's the same thing. And what I loved about your background too, and it resonated with me was, and I think so many young entrepreneurs miss this. My son is a great example. 21 years old, he goes, Dad, I want to be like you. Great. Well, here's what you got to do. You've got to go work your butt off, right? You've got to go do whatever it takes to make it happen. He goes, no, I don't want that part. I want the part, the success part. And you wanted to take dance lessons, and you're like, hey, I'll just clean up the studio and I'll swap out dance lessons. I don't know if it's a cultural thing that is shifting, that, when we were younger, that's what we did, or it's lost on the newer generation of just, I tell people all the time, you want to go work for Goldman Sachs, show up at the front door, tell them you'll work for 2 weeks and start taking out the trash.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like that is what's missing. I literally did a session with entrepreneurs. I run a local mastermind here in my hometown. And I did a session last week, and I was talking about building a winning team and how, that really is the heartbeat of a functioning company. And yet I hear these excuses all the time from entrepreneurs. I can't afford it. I can't find anybody that's willing to work. Like, there's every excuse in the book. And I said to them, to everyone in the room, I said, where is that scrappiness, that human spirit that built our country, that said, if you can't afford it, you barter. If you need to sell something, if you need to pick up a part-time job, it's like you do whatever it takes. And I feel like we have things have gotten so convenient and so accessible for us that we've lost a little bit of our utilitarian brain to solve problems and to figure these things out, because this is par for the course. And it's so important that you go through those things, because otherwise you can't learn how to manage them the right way. Right?
Absolutely. When I hire, I actually put the candidates kind of through a series of tests. And the first one is, okay, if I'm hiring for this job, great. What I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and I want you to spend the next 20 minutes and I want you to actually, give me something back. I want you to, for example, it's podcast editing. Edit something and let's see what your skills are. And they're like, well, how much are you going to pay me for that? I'm like, no, I need you to spend 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to offer you the job.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Some people got really angry. It's like, you want me to do something, and you don't even say you're going to hire me yet? I said, look, I want you to spend 20 minutes. Are you interested in a career, or are you just trying to figure out how to make $1?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have to have that mentality, and we have to not allow for that mediocrity to creep into our companies. And that's a responsibility that we have too. And I think sometimes we start to almost get brought into that cultural norm of how things are shifting. And we have to be really careful, to not succumb to that either. So I love that you brought that up. And when that happens, you need to run screaming, right? That this isn't the right person, and not just say, oh, well, maybe that's too, maybe that is asking too much. No, it's not asking too much. It's asking too much for the wrong person, right?
Do whatever it takes to make it happen.
Exactly.
I was also in corporate. I was in New York City. We were advisory firm to private equity firms, and it's a very different mindset from being in a corporate environment and becoming an entrepreneur. I'm a big believer that not everyone's cut out to be an entrepreneur. I don't, everyone has a different philosophy.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree.
You've got to be able to have the right mindset to do it. But what's necessary? What's that shift if someone's listening today that's in the corporate environment and wants to make that move over to the entrepreneurial side? What do you think that biggest shift is for them?
Yeah, I mean, I would say number one is flexibility and adaptability, because I think that when you're in corporate, even when you're in a high level role with a lot of pressure and high responsibilities, which I was, you still operate within a fairly small box. Whereas as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to speak 8 languages, do 15 different jobs, bend, flex, play Twister every day as required. And that is not for everyone. Right? Like that is not something that everyone can handle. And that's okay. Just like you said, not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur. But if you're the kind of person that has to be right and has to be the best and has to be able to do things the first time you try them out of the gate, you're going to go absolutely insane being an entrepreneur, because the whole thing that makes you a successful entrepreneur is going through all these levels of evolution where you're constantly redesigning how you're bringing yourself to the world and reinventing yourself, reinventing your services, reinventing your company. And so you have to have that spirit, right? Where you don't need things to be like this steady, stagnant line. You're okay with coloring outside the lines, and you might come in and find out it's a completely different page of the book that you're coloring in from one day to the next,
Yeah, it's very interesting because you just reminded me of several members on the team in the early days. They're like, "What are we doing?" I was like, "We're doing this."
Yeah.
They're like, "Tomorrow." I'm like, "All right, we're pivoting from that." They're like, "Wait a second, you said we were doing this." Yeah, we were. Okay, but
right. So that was 5 minutes ago.
Oh, it drove them nuts.
Yeah.
It was it was crazy. One of the things that I find I always look for, and I think is a big difference, and this is just my opinion, is that entrepreneurs tend to be problem solvers. No matter what's thrown at them, they're just like, okay, I'll figure that out. Okay.
Couldn't agree more.
And in the corporate world, it's kind of like, well, I'm responsible for this, and HR is responsible for that, or accounting is responsible for that, or sales or marketing. It's like there's just this little teeny box that they operate in.
Yes.
And as an entrepreneur, you just got to figure it out.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you have to seek out those problems and proactively find ways to address them. And in fact, I talk about this all the time, like selling to the gap in your industry and really figuring out what's not being done and what's not being addressed, and how you can be the leader in bringing something that doesn't even exist to your space is so, so important. And, whereas in corporate, like your job is not to look outside of that box and bring something different. Your job is to operate within that box and to do the best you can do within those confines. So it's a completely different mentality and mindset of even the way that you approach getting to the end result.
Yeah. And when I started, not my first business, but, I'm young enough to know, when I wanted something solved or I had a question, we went to the library. I mean, to Google it, everything is at, your fingertips. There's no excuse not to be able to find an answer to something.
No. And what I say all the time that's so unique about where we're at now, I mean, look at you and I doing a podcast on video right now. When I started even my business, I'm sure it was the same for you. There's no such thing as live streaming, right? People paid thousands of dollars to go into a recording studio, right? So that's where things were at. And the fact that we can now click a button on our phone and broadcast to the world and make money from our home offices, it's mind-blowing. But I think it's the fact that we start taking this stuff for granted that is literally like life-changing. That's where we have to be really careful, because when you start taking for granted like the magic, right, and the miracles that we are lucky enough to have at our fingertips, that's when you can kind of get yourself in trouble. But if you can try and remember that magic and be grateful for it every single day, like you're going to be at the top of your field in no time, because the vast majority of people don't even realize like the power that they have at their fingertips every day.
Let's dive into that a little bit, because we're both in a very crowded space, and there are some people that actually know what they're doing, and then there's a whole group that just are just copying somebody else's material, etc.
For sure.
Bring us through kind of the earlier days. How did it all start? And then what were some of the lessons along the way? I know for us, I had just destroyed a company. It was my sixth company. It was a manufacturing company. I couldn't figure out how to make a profit. It was a disaster. And I finally had to close that. It was a huge financial loss, and obviously emotionally as well, having to shut down after 5 successful exits.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, major failure. What do I do now? It's like, I know, profitability consulting. I'm going to make sure it never happens to anybody else, right? I've got a whole list of not to do. Just if I did this, you just do the opposite. And I remember tailoring a lot of the marketing around basically me. I was looking for me's because I was hurting so badly. I didn't want this to happen to others. And then what I really found, and where we ended up pivoting, was that's not the market that was attracted to what we were doing. The market that was attracted to us was entrepreneurs that were making significant money in a lot of cases, in most of the cases, X of $500,000 a year personally, and most of them were in the $2 and $3 million personally a year. They were just trying to figure out how to get to the next level, but we spent a year in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So what was kind of your journey? How did you start out? And then what are some of the pivots and the mistakes and things, the aha moments that you saw?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, I think very similar to you. So I did business growth strategy for a Fortune 500, and I was responsible for 17 locations. I had full P&L responsibility, and I did all the strategy for sales and for marketing and for teaching, coaching, and training the salespeople to go to market. And so for me, like, my core strength is driving profitable growth really, really quickly. And so when I decided I was going to start my business, I decided to really focus on small business owners because I knew that a lot of them didn't have the sales and marketing chops to be successful in business. And if they didn't come across someone like me, they probably were going to be out of business, right? And so that's kind of where I started. But then, very similar to you, as my business evolved and grew, I really recognized that who I was most passionate about serving was the people that did recognize how important sales and marketing was. And they already had gotten to some level of success with their firm, but now they really wanted the systems and to be able to teach their team how to elevate so that we could take this principle, implement it, and really quickly skyrocket the results. So, I started off with smaller companies and then kind of evolved. And I have a range of companies. I still do more consulting type work with bigger firms, but I also work with small business owners in my online programs where, I can serve 100, 200 people at a time doing, the online marketing piece of things.
Yeah. When do you think, we're in an age right now in advertising. Let's take Facebook advertising for a moment. The majority of the stuff coming across Facebook are small businesses. When are the Fortune 500s going to wake up and just start to decimate the social media because they have the capital to just kill it?
It's mind-blowing. It is mind-blowing. And that is exactly what I was talking about. And I guess it's lucky for small business owners like us.
But I think the window's shrinking.
But that's what I was talking about when I was saying that in entrepreneurship, you're solving problems by looking outside of the box and figuring out what to put in. Whereas in corporate, you're confined to this box and your job is to find a solution within the box, right? So I'm sure there's many people who have had the idea that their company should be doing Facebook advertising to solve their problems, but it's like, that's not usually welcomed and embraced in a corporate environment, which is why so many of us end up doing what we're doing right now, right? But I'm sure that window is shrinking. I know a lot of corporations are actually hiring consultants to help them learn to think and act in a more adaptable, flexible manner that matches more of an entrepreneurial spirit, because so many corporations are getting crushed by small businesses because of the fact that they don't have the ability to turn the ship and have the dynamic and the flexibility needed to keep up with the times, which is really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, when's Procter and Gamble going to start showing, Facebook ads for laundry detergent?
Right. It's amazing.
I don't know.
Hopefully they don't listen to your show.
That's right. Please do that. I mean, really, even if you had the capital, all right, if you had an unlimited budget, would you be advertising on the major networks?
Right. I love Facebook advertising. I've been advertising on Facebook since like 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like there's a better place to get return on investment.
Right.
I really, really don't.
Yeah.
So I'm shocked at any established business that isn't using that as a primary mechanism to drive growth. Really.
Well, if you're a Fortune 500, do not come into our space. It's a bad idea.
Yeah, exactly. Stay in ye box.
Stay over there. So what,
right.
Besides, making that shift and changing from the smaller companies and working with the bigger companies, was there something that, you got to a point in your business and you said, we need to make a major pivot? Or was it just kind of an evolution where there were small pivots along the way?
Yeah, I mean, hundreds of small pivots along the way, but I would say one big pivot for us was about a year and a half ago. We decided that we were going to really reshape all of our programs to lead with accountability. Because what we saw happening in the coaching space was people were just being cattle herded into these massive programs, no support, no accessibility, no accountability, and people are just floundering. Right. And so we decided to run 1,000 miles an hour in the opposite direction, restructure all of our programs to really lead with accountability, lead with high touch, human touch from myself, my team, my accountability coaches. And the results have been astounding. Our growth has gone through the roof. And that's what I was talking about earlier when I was mentioning about selling to the gap. Really understanding what the gaps in your market are that everyone else is either too greedy or too lazy to fill, and then going and attacking those. Because in every single market, there's something that everyone has been missing for forever. Was Uber that brilliant, or did Uber look at the taxi industry that was floundering and was terrible for decades that no one did anything about and come in and provide a better solution? Right? I'm sure there will be a next layer of that, and then a next layer and a next layer. But we all have the opportunity to be the Uber of our industry. And it doesn't need to take investors or venture capital or millions of dollars to do it. It's just about using your brain and really having the courage to say, I'm going to step outside of what the norms are in my industry and do things differently to get my client a better result.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk a lot about paid accountability partners don't work. Why? Because you just end up being friends at some point. You just kind of
exactly. Nothing happens.
You got to pay somebody that's going to hold you accountable. Matter of fact,
exactly.
Our accountability programs. If you want to steal that, this is fine. We have 2 rules for not doing what you said you were going to do. One, you died, or 2, you've been in prison for the last 13 days.
That's it. I love that.
Otherwise,
I couldn't agree more. Yep.
Because excuses are everywhere.
That's
perfect.
Great.
It does come down to accountability.
It really does.
It's about the execution, and the execution is about the accountability. And I do it, every year I have a very difficult physical challenge that I commit to every year. And the first thing I do is I put it on Facebook to my 5,000 closest friends. And, hey, I'm going to be doing this. And
I love that.
I've got no way back. Last year I did 2 Ironmans without being a swimmer or runner or a cyclist. You just figure it out. Get out there, get accountable.
That's it. I love it.
I know you have a program coming up is it October?
Oh, the Game Changer. Yes.
And I love that name, by the way. I'm in an entrepreneurs group, EO, and my little forum, my board of directors, are called the Game Changers.
Oh, I love that. Yes. So we just opened up tickets and literally we were blown away by the response. We have a handful of seats left. We're probably going to sell out within the next week, to be honest. I probably should have booked a much larger facility than I did, but I didn't realize how much the interest would be. But as of this moment, we still have some seats left. And what we're doing there is 2 things. One, we're really focusing on helping people get their $1 million profit plan and bring together kind of the 6 C's of what needs to happen to build a $1 million brand online. Because what we see is people thinking that one silver bullet or one little tactic or, one thing that the guru's been telling you to do is, going to get it done. And we all know that doesn't happen, right? So we're going to be working through that with everyone there. And then we're really going to be working with people to help them get good on camera. Because the future of all business is online and the future of all online business is video. And so no entrepreneur can continue into the future without really working every single day to improve their chops on video. So we're going to teach people how to command the virtual room, own it, work it, and turn it into dollars and cents in the bank account.
I love that. So just not a bunch of information, actually practical things that.
Exactly. No one needs more information.
No.
Like the information age is over. Like no one needs more information. We're good with that, I think, for a while.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Knowledge is not power. The execution of that knowledge is power.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
actually, I don't know if you can see it here. We're somewhere back there, somewhere on the. Oh, there they are. There's actually 6 silver bullets. So someone says, "Hey, you got a silver bullet for me?" Yes, I have it right here.
I love it.
When I go to speak, but I figure that would not be a good thing to go through TSA with.
Right.
They actually look
I love that. That's awesome.
Like, bullets. Maybe you do a remote site with video. You do video in your room, and simulcast it over to the other room. Like Tony Robbins he sold out his programs. He just get the auxiliary room going.
Yeah. We're working on a virtual. We're working on a virtual for sure.
There you go. You don't want to make anybody can't come. I know you just did a episode, I think about a week ago, and it was things millionaires do differently.
Yeah.
What are some of the things millionaires do differently?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first and foremost, they're thinking in terms of decades and lifetimes. They're not thinking in terms of seconds and minutes. And that, I think, obviously is, or should be essential common sense. But in our world, that has to be said now. I find that has to be said now, because what I'm seeing in the online entrepreneur space is that, there's this micromanagement of every single thing that you do, that the second you do it, you expect a return. And if you didn't get a return immediately after doing it, you want to go start something new. Right?
Yeah.
And so what we have is millions of people that are great starters that never finish anything. They never master anything. And so they never make any money. And so, when I look at, the way that I'm planning, the way that other millionaires that I work with and multimillionaires I work with are planning, we're all looking in terms of 5 years, 10-year, 15-year increments. We're not looking at how did my post do on Facebook today, right? Like that's not the way that we're thinking and looking. So I think that's a big thing. I think also just constantly investing in yourself. And we all know that these are basic things, but I think, people always come up against the resistance of, I'm not there yet. Should I wait until I'm there to make that investment? And it doesn't matter what it is, right? It could be with a coach. It could be with a team member. It could be with an investment that your business needs to grow. And, it's one of those things where I always give the example, millionaires get this. You can't expect your car to take you from Philadelphia to San Diego and say, when the car gets me to San Diego, then I'll put some gas in it.
Yeah.
And this is how the average person thinks, right? They're like, when it shows up, that's when I'll know that it's a certain thing and I'll invest. And it's like, no, you got to put the gas in the tank, right? And then you got to be willing to drive the car across country if you want to get to that destination. So these are just little things. And I think people think that becoming a millionaire is such this like huge, massive thing no, it's not. No. It's the little decisions that we make every single day. And there are plenty of people that have become millionaires that never made more than $50,000 a year, but they made decisions differently. And that's why I recently did that show, because I think there's so much head trash that goes on around it. And it's really simple stuff that anyone can do every single day.
Yeah. I find that we're fortunate enough to work with very successful business owners. And some of the things that I see is they're not working harder. In some cases, they're not even working smarter. But their businesses have margin. Mm-hmm. And they're working on deals that are bigger. If there's a real estate guy, he's not flipping small houses for 100. He's flipping major buildings for 100 million.
Exactly.
And so I think the opportunity, whatever vehicle you're in, the opportunity and the space in the lane and the gap that you're filling is important, because if you have a low margin business and it's capital intensive, you could be just working your butt off and just grinding every single day.
Yep. And you're absolutely right in everything that you just said there. And, I think that the big thing for people to realize that it's actually harder to play small than it is to play big. I literally just did a live stream about this morning, and I said, when you start rising in your space, it is so much less crowded up here than it is down here. Like it is a swamp down here, man. It is filled with critters. But once you start rising, you find that like it's you and a handful of other people. And if you stay consistent and you have that long-term vision, like you will just continue to rise, and it becomes so much easier the higher that you go. It does not become harder. It does not require more hours, but you do need to think differently. I think the brain power and the application of your brain power is probably like the biggest difference, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. And with your analogy about driving across the states, going to, was it San Diego?
Yeah.
And fill it up at the end, is you've got to expect that there's going to take some time before the results show up. You've got to constantly just keep going. And we think success should go, at a nice little even pace. It just doesn't work that way.
It does not work that way.
Nothing. Then it's like, whoop, there we go.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I had one other question for you. Oh, I knew what it was. I loved what you said in a recent podcast. You were talking about, okay, let's check in and see how you're doing. How successful have you been in the first quarter? And I always chuckle about this because, you ask someone, how's business going? Oh, business is great. Sales are up 15%. We're opening another office. We brought on 18 new employees. I'm sorry, maybe I asked the wrong question. How much more did you put into your savings account this quarter?
Yes.
What do you tell your clients? How do you get them to focus on it? Doesn't matter what you create on the top line. The only thing that matters is what's in your savings account, out of the company, in your or investments or whatever you want.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. So for me, my whole philosophy is to build a family first business. And that is the thing that I talk about every single day with my audience, every single day with my clients. And what I say to them is, your family doesn't get positively impacted by you growing your revenue. There is no net positive to your family of that. The only net positive to your family is you working less hours and putting more money in your bank account, right? It's more quality time with you and more great experiences because of what hit the bottom line. So you can't fulfill the most sacred relationship that you have, and probably your number one reason for being on the planet, if you're not looking at how is the work that I'm doing translating back to the bottom line. Yeah. So I think it's so important to remember that. I'm actually having Mike, the guy who wrote the Profit First book,
he's awesome.
He's coming into my community in like a week and a half actually to speak to my tribe, because I think it's so important, and it's a message that just doesn't get out there enough for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, and it's so easy to implement.
It is. Yeah. It's so simple. It's so simple.
It just becomes automatic, and your net worth net worth just keeps going up.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Every day. So important.
For sure.
I run into mostly that. I'll talk to a group and I'm like, how many people here are business owners? They'll all raise their hands. And I said, are you really business owners, or does the business own you?
Yeah.
All of a sudden your hands go, ooh, I think he's right.
Yeah.
Kelly, this has been amazing. Thank you very much for coming on today, and look forward to having you back on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to be here.
Have a great day.
Thank you.